Hello tanks and tankettes, welcome to Supporter Spotlight number 26, and we're actually kicking off this video with this little clip here from I Be The One True Nub. Now, I was actually in this match in an OI with, I think, the derp gun, and as you can see, he's in the KV2 with, of course, the derp gun, because what else would you use on the KV2? You'd have to be a bit crazy to use, really, any other gun. But because it's the KV2 with the derp, you can guess what kind of a shot is coming up here. Now, he's on the move, this Type 64 is on the move, but you know what? It doesn't matter, because Russia. Yes, that is the kind of KV2 shot that is... It's the reason why people play the KV2, is silly things like that. And that Type 64 driver, I've left the clip run a little bit long because he was of exactly the same opinion. KV2 move, on the move, no problem, da Russia. Well, exactly, you can't put it any better than that. So anyway, on to the first replay proper. I've got a pair of French tanks, the first of which is this, the M4A1 Revalorise. Now this is not the first of the ace games in this thing that Island Man has sent me, but I decided to go with this one because it's not great matchmaking. It's not awful. About half of each team is tier 8. I almost said half of each time there, which would have not made any sense whatsoever, but anyway. And for this thing, well, the gun is pretty reasonable for a tier 8 medium tank. However, because it's a Sherman, it's got no armour. Because it's a big gun in a Sherman turret, it's got very little gun depression. And it's also got a fairly terrible rate of fire. So this thing really is stuck in a support role. If you're going to do a lot of damage in the M4A1 Rev, then you're going to need a game that lasts longer than 4 minutes. And a lot of games don't. So his initial contact with the enemy is down here in the south, but it's only a T-44. It's not a huge threat. I mean, it can hurt him, but there are plenty of allied tanks around, so it's not a big issue. And although he's managed to get in one hit, I don't think he's going to get the kill on this guy. In fact, it looks like the... I mean, he's managed to get hulled down into one of those craters, but it was only going to buy him a little bit of time, because he really didn't have any backup. There was no cavalry coming to save him. So he's down, and they've got control of this area, although there are a couple of tanks along the 9 line. And actually, this match as a whole, it was quite a close one. I think the teams must have been reasonably matched in terms of skill, because there wasn't any great sudden dramatic like shifting or collapse or anything like that. They each had control of fairly well defined areas of the map, and they were just pushing against each other. Now he's moved up to get flanking shots on the M103 and hopefully saved the T54. It was a T54, wasn't it? T55. Same difference. But unfortunately, he isn't able to damage that M103 enough, so it takes a third shot to kill him, by which point the T55 is dead. It was Russian and is practically a T54, yes. Next, side shots on the Object 140, although I can't remember offhand if he actually does get any hits into this guy, because he's sort of ducking in and out of cover. And I mean, this is nice for Island Man, because he can just sit here and aim. The Object 140 is in fact entirely concentrating on other machines. But he's just not had any luck up until the point where, there we go, the guy got tracked and was stationary sideways in front of him. So another hit, and he can get the kill on this guy, which will be worth a little bit. Unfortunately, the Batchat gets in ahead of him just. And also, just in time, Island Man notices that that's a KV4 coming round behind him. And I think the KV4 was actually coming for him, because as you'll see, he's turning to look at Island Man. Although he is being a bit, I don't know if he's got high ping or if he's just got his attention is split, but either way, he's not entirely on the ball here, and that lets Island Man just pop out and put in another hit. Now his own team has broken towards the west, unfortunately, so most of what's left are the tanks that were pushing from the middle. They do have still an artillery left alive as well, who might shotgun somebody. It just depends, I guess. But either way, this is now quite close. Now the Batchat gets away with a bit of health, but of course the rate of fire at which the T-41 can put out shots means that he's not going to be able to take any more hits from this point. Iron Man, meanwhile, still has full health. And that's mostly just because he's always been in company, and I think that's how you need to play this thing, is you don't want to go off on your own if at all possible, just because of your lack of armour and your low rate of fire. However, in terms of penetration, he should be okay to get through. Well, the T-30 won't be a problem, but the Jagdpanzer E-100 might be. And he can really only take one hit at most from either of them. Oh, now that was a bit close. Now he goes for the tracking shot, and this is ordinarily, with a faster rate of fire in a medium tank, this would be nice. He could just keep the guy perma-tracked. However, not with this rate of fire. He absolutely cannot get the shells out fast enough. He does, however, get the T-30, who was a one-shot, so that's fine. So I think at this point he was waiting for the 30 to come up round and hope that he would distract the Jaegeru, or possibly just get in a shot. Unfortunately, that time, Iron Man, peeking out again, does not get so lucky. The Jaegeru hits him with a heat shell, which, I mean, maybe he just had a heat shell loaded. I mean, if it was specifically a heat shell for Island Man, it was a little bit of overkill, considering this is a Sherman. But either way, it finds its mark, and it's not left him in a very nice state at all. He's pretty low health now. Now, the Ferdinand just kind of sits there, doesn't back off, doesn't try and use cover, and gets taken out easily by the Jaegeru. He was an easy one-shot for that gun. Meanwhile, the Batchat took out the last remaining enemy heavy, the T-34, and can't have taken much more damage in the process because, well, he would have been a one-shot for the T-34, so he's played very well. He's got a chance at a Pools medal if we can kill the Jaegeru. Unfortunately, the Jaegeru takes him, so now it's just up to Island Man. This is suddenly a lot tougher. We've come down to this sort of an ending. And again, with a faster rate of fire, this wouldn't be an issue. He could just keep this guy perma-tracked. But his repair speed is clearly superior to the reload on this thing. So it's a matter now more of mobility. Unfortunately, there is a pile of rubble that this Jaegeru can use, and he knows it. So Island Man, once again tracking, doesn't do any damage that time. This is, I mean, he's just got to try and keep behind the guy, keep away from his gun. But this guy, I mean, he's trying to use this this rubble to get his gun round. However, RNGesus decides to intervene. That shot into the side, that last shot, sets him on fire. The guy had either been on fire or just didn't have a fire extinguisher because he was using, I don't know, premium fuel or premium food or something, and he burns out. So you could say RNGesus saved the day in that one, but still Island Man did his best at the end there and actually walked away with almost top damage on the team. The Batchat was top with 4,600 and almost a Pools medal, but because Island Man was a tier 8 tank, fighting against higher tiers, he actually got a much better score than the Batchat. So that was a pretty nice game. And it wasn't even that long. It was only 8 minutes just over in total. So that amount of damage for 8 minutes in an M4A1 Rev it's not bad at all. And as you can see, it was pretty profitable too. So on to our second French tank. This is Sebedi in the AMX 50B. And this might actually be in some ways similar to my own recent 50B game that I put on the channel, in that there's possibly one or two awkward moments, but it goes on long enough that the 50B as an autoloader comes into its own on at the end of the game. Now, there is an auto-loading arty on the enemy team, so he's got to be careful about that. He is obviously a top-tier heavy, he's a squashy top-tier heavy, and so that makes him an attractive target. And because it's an auto-loading arty, it could do him a lot of damage very quickly. However, of all the tanks that are in front of him right now, the one that's actually going to cause him the most difficulty is that T-54 Mod 1, which is a tier 8 premium medium tank, another tier 8 premium medium. You wouldn't think that it would be particularly troublesome for this gun, but it kind of proves to be. So he's withdrawn to reload. Fortunately, the reload on the 50B is not that long at all. It's one of the big improvements over the 5120, along with gun handling and gun elevation and the gun depression and just a whole host of little quality of life things that just make this such a nice upgrade from the Tier 9. That, by the way, that looked like an artillery shell, so he's going to have to be slightly careful here. Now that VKA decides to go up the hill and pays a hefty price for it, but Sebedy can't quite get the kill. He does, however, get a very lucky bounce off what I think was his turret armor, or possibly the gun surround from that 113, and he gets a hit in return. And if he had taken that hit, that could have been nasty. That could have been, what, 500 odd health? So, yeah, it's quite nice he avoided that. So it looks like they've got a lightweight trying to push around from the side. I mean, they do have superior enemy numbers here, and yet, because he's in an auto-loader, I think that makes them especially reluctant to push. There is also a Skoda T50 back there as well, another auto-loader. So, although they have superior numbers, if they were to push into this, his allies and himself would be able to exact a really heavy toll. And so, I guess they took enough damage already, and they're wary enough of there being autoloaders that they're just really reluctant, and you can kind of understand it. But the fact that they are then just kind of sitting there means they're not doing a great deal to advance their team's chances of winning. Now, the TVP, as you can see, the enemy TVP actually does get an idea to move up, and he catches Sebedy in a reload, so he can't actually do anything about it, unfortunately. His own Skoda T50 ally is going to have to take care of that. And he is just about loaded, but I mean, this IS-3 is in the way, and he's finding it awkward to get enough gun elevation. Now, this isn't nearly as awkward, as I've said, as the 5120 in those terms, but it's still pretty damn awkward. By the time he does get a shot, well, the TVP's down, but so is the Skoda T50, and he's just taken a hit from that Mod 1, and from the VKA as well. Yeah, this is one of the very few Tier 10 heavies where even all the... like anything at Tier 8 can just pain you as long as they're shooting in the turret. Now at this point, he just goes forwards and accepts he's going to take the hits and loses more health. And this has been quite a costly engagement. This is against a pair of Tier 8s where he's lost a big chunk of his hit points, but he's at least taken out one of them. However, he needs the IS-3 to step up a bit here because, well, he's actually got a much better chance in his Tier 8 heavy of bouncing that shot than Sebedy does in his Tier 10 heavy because of the nature of this Tier 10 heavy. So if they can take this guy out, they can get control of the hill. There we go. And that maybe gives them some better positions to shoot from. However, in the meantime, the rest of the team, I mean, they've been fighting, they've been inflicting casualties, but they've also been dying. So it's now just Sebedy, the IS-3, and artillery. This is going to be a bit of a tall order. So as you can see, the 113 didn't hang around on the hill. He actually decided that sitting there was not going to help them and moved accordingly. And at this point, Sebedy wants to move himself, except going back along the way he came would mean exposing himself. And so he decides, I'm just going to sit behind this rock instead and hope that they don't rush me while I'm reloading. And they might have done, actually. That's one of those times when, if they'd been counting the shots, they could have realised that, hey, this guy's reloading. But it still might have been a bit risky trying to push into that. And instead, I'm not quite sure what the 113 does. Now, the IS-3 is held position. I think it actually gets a shot in there against the 113. The T-30 was spotted coming up behind Sebedy, so we know where he is. And there we go. He's making a move on the cap now. But with artillery having taken out the 113 and the T-30 basically now being alone, there is still enemy RT to worry about, but this is a much more comfortable situation. This is 2 versus 1. Basically, either one of them takes the hit, and the IS-3 could afford to, or even just distracts the guy. So the IS-3 makes the move, which is absolutely the right thing to do, and actually T-30 bounces on the IS-3, and that's one of the reasons why I tend not to use the big 155mm gun, which I think that was on the T-30, because when it trolls you hard, and then you've got a very long reload. And sometimes that long reload just dooms you. Being alone in a T-30 with the 155mm gun is usually a recipe for disaster, and it was in that case. So their own artillery reckons that the enemy Batchat arty is over in this corner, and Zebedee decides, okay, let's actually take a look-see, because that Batchat arty could run away. He could be annoying, and even just if they don't go after him, he could potentially still tip it in the enemy team's favour. And as it turns out, he is exactly here. Now the question is he loaded or not? So that was, I think, an exactly average roll, 400 damage. And then unfortunately Zebedee, I mean, he's trying to keep tabs on what's going on behind him, but he gets distracted and does not notice until it's too late the Batchat arty just driving forwards and derping him in the face. Fortunately, however, he doesn't die. He also gets an angle on the Yag Tiger for his last two shots, which is nice, and then the IS-3 takes the last 1 health. So it was a little bit hairy at the end there. There was 1 or 2 moments where it could have gone badly wrong, but on the whole, he and the IS-3 worked very nicely together in conjunction with the artillery to just scrape out a victory. And he actually got a high caliber and an ace out of that with 6,500 damage and 1,100 base XP, and the IS-3 actually did better than him, and I think he kind of deserved to, because he kept his head at the end. He made the right moves, especially against the T-30. He had the hit points to take the hit, so he went in, and that meant that they could take out the T-30 and move up from there, because otherwise it would have been a bit of a stalemate. So again, a pretty decent result, and a nice game all round. Lastly, we have this Warships Kagero game from Andy CX, and he's actually got pretty decent matchmaking in that there are no carriers to worry about. Hooray! Now there are a couple of enemy destroyers that might be a problem, but on the whole there are enough hit points at the top of the enemy team, a Yamato especially, that this might be a very nice game for him potentially. So this is it Shatter? I can't remember what this map's called, but anyway, you don't see this around too often, or at least I don't see this one too often. Maybe that's just luck. This is actually one of the maps we played on for the show match in Poland, and it was probably our least favourite map, I think, of both teams, just because you start with a split spawn, even in team battles. And of course, for regular battles, that's true as well. So he started over here on the eastern side and has immediately gone forward to try and get the C point, except the enemy Fubuki managed to get there first. Now, I'm not sure offhand who would have the better concealment. I mean, I suppose it depends on captain skills alongside, of course, the base concealment range and all that. But anyway, he's not spotted for now. He definitely has got situational awareness on this captain. So he puts out his torps and makes to withdraw. Because, well, he could go forward, he could try and spot the Fubuki, and he does have a lot of teammates behind him, but the Fubuki has got a lot of teammates behind him as well. So it would be a case of, you know, they both go forward, they both spot each other, they both smoke, and, you know, what do you do then? I'll also note, it seems like he's not using the premium consumables on this, which might just be because he didn't have the credits, or I don't know, but that means effectively that not only has he got a longer cooldown on his damage control party, but he's only got 2 charges each of the smoke and the speed boost, so he's going to have to choose when and where to use them quite carefully. So he dips out briefly, but I mean he's keeping in the cap circle, so this Fubuki can't complete the capture, and that means that the enemy team isn't getting the advantage of 2 cap circles right now. They've got 1 each. The enemy team's got A, his team has got B. And I think at the moment, oh, there we go, we can see the Yamato is on this side. He's content just to try and keep his distance. That's a big knot of enemy ships, and charging in against them would be, well, suicidal. There's literally no reason why you would do that at this stage of the game. And it's interesting to note that although you still very frequently in World of Tanks see what is called suicide scouting, people that just drive at the enemy team with no intention of living beyond the first 2 minutes of battle. You don't really ever see that in warships, because although your destroyers are the eyes of the team, they're also so much more than that as well. They can also be very, very powerful offensive ships, and so you don't tend to see people just throwing their destroyers away in the same way. And actually, at some point, I mean, they are talking about there being spotting mechanics and spotting damage in this game as there is in World of Tanks, and we don't know when that'll happen exactly, but that'll be very nice for destroyer captains in particular, because it means they will finally get some reward for that particular role. At the moment, he is probably keeping some of these ships lit up, but I mean, the rest of his allies are close enough that it's a bit of a toss-up as to who is actually lighting up who of the enemy team. But there are a lot of scenarios where in a destroyer you might shadow an enemy cruiser or battleship just to keep them lit up for your allies. And presently you don't get any reward for that, and that's equally true if you're a carrier using your planes to keep, say, a destroyer spotted or something like that. So this enemy Fubuki still in the cap circle somewhere, and now that he's got a cruiser very close with him, he's starting to cautiously move forwards a bit, but he's not wanting to get away from the Hipper and the Kutuzov behind him. And they are going to be taking the bulk of the enemy fire and presumably firing themselves at those enemy ships that are quite close by. But potentially, if he spots the Fubuki, he might get some fire support. But no, it doesn't look like he has yet, so potentially he's still right on the south of the cap circle where he was last spotted. Now Andy's going to leave the cap circle, but the Hipper is inside, so they've still got sea blocked effectively. And as they are nicely ahead on ships at the moment, 2 of their own to 4 of the enemy's sunk, they've got a nice lead in points, but not enough to get complacent about. So they're actually capping A, it looks like, and I think Andy at this point is now seriously hunting the Fubuki. And Andy spotted, and there he is. So yes, he was pretty much in the same position. Now he's about to pull behind the island, but there we go, one of the cruisers is shooting at him, and Andy actually holds fire himself until he's basically behind cover between the island, between him and the Fubuki, except he's not really in cover between anything and the Hipper and the Yamato, so he's got to be a bit careful. But they get the reset anyway, so even if one of them drives out, they've got a little bit more time. However, not that it would matter that much at this point if the enemy team had C, because they are firmly in control of the other 2 capture points, and it looks like in the west they're actually winning rather nicely. Now Andy's not actually done any damage yet, but he's hoping to, clearly, because now he's broken through the cap circle and the Fubuki's still there. The fact that the cap points are still showing as sort of frozen on C means that he's got now free reign against both this Yamato and Hipper, which is very nice. He's managed to make this breakout work just because the Fubuki is so unwilling to leave the cap circle. He's just, I guess he's trying to torpedo the cruisers that are there, but that means he's not protecting his own allies at all. He's got to be careful though, Andy. He's getting awfully close to this Fubuki once again, so he's going to get himself spotted, and there it is, and smoke. Now I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, or if he just didn't notice how close he was getting to the Fubuki, but either way, that Fubuki's not moving yet. Now, one of the things that you have to be aware of these days with destroyers is that in the last patch, they actually changed the way smoke generation works. And there you go, you can see the Fubuki's smoked himself. And oh, nice! Andy got the Hipper, so that's his first bit of damage. And it was a big chunk as well. It was over 30,000, so there we go. But yeah, these days, the way it works is such that if you're a destroyer laying down smoke and even moving at all, you're going to get spotted the moment you actually go outside the current blob of smoke, as it were, because it used to be that you would keep emitting smoke even when you were in the smoke. So you would have these overlapping circles of smoke that had been generated. Except that doesn't seem to be the case now. It's more like the game goes, right, well, you're in this blob of smoke, you don't need to lay down smoke. And so you don't lay down another blob of smoke until you actually move outside of your current blob of smoke, at which point, if you're close enough to be spotted by anybody, you're going to get spotted. So it makes using smoke for destroyers a bit trickier these days, and I think that was not necessarily a popular change. It was probably one of the big reasons why a lot of people were talking about they thought situational awareness was broken, that something had changed, and I think it was just the change in the smoke mechanics, which I don't think were particularly well publicised. I think this was people figuring it out and posting it on the forums and that nature of thing, that sort of gave it away a bit. Anyway, unfortunately, that Fubuki had one lot of torps left, and that nearly wipes out Andy's ship. However, it's not enough to kill him. So, he's now perilously low health from full health, and oh look, there's an enemy Kigero. There's the last remaining enemy destroyer. There's also a Montana over there as well. However, they are very firmly ahead on this point. Andy just has to stay alive, pretty much. They've got 2 cap circles, they've wiped out most of the enemy team, and they've taken some pretty heavy losses themselves, but that cumulative effect of holding those cap circles and the enemy team having lost their only cap circle reasonably early on means that unless they can really start murdering things very quickly, they're going to lose. And it's a situation where discretion's the better part of valor. If you're in this kind of well, I'm going to say the word situation again, aren't I? If you're in this situation with 500 health and you're an easy kill for the enemy, running away is the best thing you can do. You don't want to give the enemy those points. You want to stay alive, basically. So he runs away, he lets the Kigero have C, but that means while the Kigero is capping, he can now unmolested drop torpedoes on this Montana. And the Montana probably knows he's there, but he's also going to be shooting at the Tirpitz, at the Kutuzov, and anything else that he can. So he might not necessarily have in mind that, oh dear, there's a destroyer nearby, I'd better act accordingly. And it does look like he's initiating a bit of a turn there, and there goes the Kutuzov, so that's some points going back to the enemy. But because he's turning broadside like that, oh look at that, that's going to be nice. Oh yeah, oh yeah, 5 hits and completely wipes out that tier 10 battleship. So that is why, if you know there's a destroyer nearby, you must basically steer accordingly. You must take the appropriate evasive action. That Montana didn't and has paid the price. So basically at that point they won on the timer. They didn't lose any more ships. The enemy didn't lose any more ships. It was just the ticking victory points. So that was enough. But as you can see from the score, 8 torpedo hits, and it was only against 2 ships. He did get 3 kills. I think he killed that was it the Fubuki or whatever it was with his guns. I can't remember now. Whatever destroyer it was, the other Japanese destroyer that he killed with his guns. But the rest of it was all torpedo damage, and as you can see, over 100k with torpedoes alone. It was 2 very unwary ship drivers that just fell completely afoul of Andy's main armament and probably rushed off to the forums right afterwards to complain about how overpowered destroyers are. Well, you know what's also overpowered? The WASD keys. And sometimes a destroyer captain will get the upper hand. They will maneuver you into a position where they simply cannot miss the torpedoes. And that's frustrating. But 75, 80, 95%, well, that's a bit of a jump from 80 to 95. But you know what I mean. The majority of the time, you can do something about it. And that Montana driver certainly could have. I think the Hipper driver certainly could have. But they didn't, and they paid the price. So hopefully you have enjoyed this set of games, and if you have, you can leave any comments below. You can hit the like button, you can sub to my channel if you aren't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.